Hey guys, my name is Janelle. If you're new here, I haven't heard my voice for like 2 days because I've been avoiding talking. I'm getting over a cold, or I might just be in the middle of it and I'm trying to pretend I'm not sick when I feel pretty bad. This video is about how I grew up in a hoarder's house, essentially. Oh god, I sound so funny. Okay. So a phrase that I kind of thought of and really agree with for the last few months, and I've talked to people who are in similar situations, is the phrase moderately fucked up childhood. I definitely had one of those. It wasn't completely terrible, it wasn't completely awful, you know, my parents didn't like completely hate me, but it was a little bit neglectful. And so this hoarding situation is a small piece of a very large, moderately fucked up puzzle, and I'm just sharing about one aspect of that and how it kind of related to me being a minimalist here and now. And I will say, like, my parents did so much better by me than their parents did by them, and I think every generation back, they've made huge leaps and bounds from the generation that they came from. Like my great-grandmother, but she was born when slavery still existed. So she was born as a slave, and then slavery ended while she was alive. So just 4 generations ago, like, my family had a lot bigger issues than they do today, than I presently do, and I'm really grateful for that. We haven't had time over generations to fix things that other races have had lots of generational time to fix, heal, and progress on. So the parent that I lived with from the ages of 0 to 18 and a half or something like that was definitely someone who fit into all the categories of a hoarder, but it wasn't near as extreme as those reality TV shows where you see people opening the front door and they have to climb over about 5 feet worth of stuff just to get into the house. But the word hoarder was definitely a word that me and my siblings used to describe this parent and their habits way before like the common public associated that word with an image that, like, you know, you now see on those reality TV shows. Basically, what was it like to grow up with a hoarder? Well, it fucking sucked and I hated it. The biggest thing that really bothered me is that I was super embarrassed and I never had any friends over. I was a very introverted child, very shy, almost nonverbal. And so I think my preferred childhood would have been just having a friend come over and us hanging out and doing whatever. But I could never have anyone over because my house was so embarrassing. While we didn't have, you know, mountains to crawl across, there was always things in the hallway that we had to maneuver around. There was always piles and piles of crap. The thing that really bothered me, that kind of messed me up a lot, was mail. It would kind of just come into the house, big stacks of it, because we got tons of like bill collections and stuff like that. And so it would just go into this big pile where the mail was stashed, kind of in this corner or on a table or something like that. And every day there was like more mail and it would go into maybe a different pile. And so I actually didn't find out I was accepted to college for like 6 weeks because it was hidden somewhere in this mail supply. It was also, the mail thing was also super annoying because when I was away at college, I was moving almost every 6 months for the first couple of years. And so I never really had a permanent address, and I never sent anything to those addresses that I had because I lived in a dorm. And so coming home every 5 or 6 months is what I usually did. Trying to figure out what mail I received and if anything was important was a hassle and usually didn't happen. My sister actually had a warrant out for her arrest due to mail-related issues. And the thing that really bothered me was that that parent always told us to clean up the house and kind of blamed a lot of the messiness on us. And now that we're all older, most of us live in our own places, all of us are pretty neat people, maybe except for one, I'm not gonna say who, but nowhere near as hoarderish as that parent. I adopted a lot of hoarder tendencies. I found myself holding on to everything, and when I moved out of the house that I had lived in high school and a little bit of middle school, I took everything with me because I didn't trust anything to be in the house and to be safe and not be damaged or lost, etc., etc. And so everything I had fit in my car, and I was hauling all that stuff around semester to semester, dorm to dorm, to finally my very first apartment complex that I lived in with a couple other girls. And most of it was junk. A lot of it was like beauty products I hadn't touched in 2 years, but I was still carrying around with me and I didn't really know why. And so when I finally found minimalism, I like got rid of most of that at the very beginning, and I was like, why am I holding on to this? I have no idea, let's get rid of it. And I did, and it was great. My parent was basically in denial about the crap she had, and we would always vent to her about it or kind of, you know, complain about things, but we never got super into depth because we kind of knew like there was something deep down like causing all of those issues, and we weren't in a place as kids to really deal with that. And it was super dysfunctional. Another thing growing up in a hoarder's house is that nothing is ever really thrown away. Everything is kind of sentimental, or everything will be gone through. Another thing that I didn't realize until after I left for school and came back for holidays, we would keep stuff in the fridge for like months. Like I would come home for Thanksgiving holidays, we would have like a Thanksgiving meal, I would stay for a couple of days, and then I'd go back to school. And then when I come home for Christmas break, the same like holiday foods were still in the fridge. And if I didn't know better, I would have eaten certain things that didn't look like they had it spoiled. But certain things you could look at and you could tell like the meat had gotten like air rotten and it was super dry and tough, but it was still just in the fridge. And so I never knew how long something had been in the fridge. I didn't know what was okay to eat. I didn't know what was not okay to eat. Oh my gosh, our cupboards were another freaking story. We always would buy multiples of something. And usually when I say we right now, I mostly mean that parent because I was a child most of this time. We would have so many like canned vegetables and stuff in our pantry that were expired. I remember one time I was like sick and I was eating the cereal and it tasted so funny. And my mom told me, you know, it tastes funny because my taste buds are all messed up because I was sick at the time. And I was like, okay, that sounds legit. So I ate the cereal for like 3 days. And then I finally started to feel better and I was like, no, this cereal's like messed up. Like it tasted really weird. And it had been expired for 8 years. And I was just like, Jesus, like what the fuck? So anything that was perishable was always super iffy if you were eating it at my house. I never gave people who came over food because, I mean, maybe I would suggest myself to things that I could eat, but I wouldn't suggest anyone that I cared about or friends to any sketchy food or something like that. Another thing that really frustrated me that made me like super sad is that I would buy this parent a gift and then, you know, a couple years later I'd just be in the room and I'd be going through stuff and I would find the gift completely unopened, completely unused. And so it made me never want to give that person anything because it's just going to end up in some pile with a bunch of other crap. Even if you did give someone who's like has hoarder tendencies something useful and something good, like all the good, all of the bad, all the crap and all of the nice things all end up in some pile shoved under a bed, shoved at the bottom of a closet, all mixed up together. So you don't want to give this person anything good because in all likelihood they're never going to use it. We would always buy multiples of things that we already had. Like we didn't know if we had paper towels that were hidden somewhere deep in the abyss of our cabinet because it took too much effort to get to the back of that cabinet. You know, every few months we'd like try to clean up a little bit and make like a small dent in things and that would last for maybe a week or two. The thing that I really kind of like resent about the situation is that I was super embarrassed and I never had friends over. Some of my other siblings like did not give a fuck about this, which is great for them, but it really bothered me. And as someone who is super introverted, especially when I was younger, I was super shy and a bit of a hermit. I think my ideal friendship would have been someone just coming over, hanging out, and like us playing video games or doing something in the backyard. First of all, there was never any space for someone to just be and exist. Like the couch was always full of crap, the coffee tables were always covered. It was a mission to find the remote if it was ever lost. And there's only 2 friends that I had over. One was like my best friend and she knew what was up. And then this other girl who I met in high school, she was literally blind. If I was less than 6 feet away from her in the hallway at school, she would have to like squint and really focus to see if it was my face or not. She could tell who I was if I like spoke or something like that. She could never drive, she could never do anything like that. If she was reading, she reads like this with super thick glasses. And I would let her come to my house because she literally could not see how gross things were. I think like a common misconception with hoarders' houses is that it's not just messy. There's not just kind of stuff here and stuff there. It's dirty, it's moldy, it's gross, things stink, things smell, there's smushed cockroaches in the layers and the piles of all of this junk. Thank God we never had like a pest problem or a rodent problem because that would have been a nightmare. Another thing with this hoarder parent is that they never said no to anything. So hand-me-downs of clothes for the kids, hand-me-down toys, like literally anything anyone offered to give us because they were like, oh, this poor family, we accepted. We had like hand-me-down furniture. We wouldn't get rid, like if we got a new couch from somebody, we didn't necessarily get rid of the old one. We just kind of shoved both of them into the small living room that didn't have room for 2 couches. So like I said, we constantly had to maneuver around things, especially in the hallway. It was constantly full of like clothes that needed to be laundered, but the clothes would be there for so long, like they would be caked down, like stepped on with like dirt and grum and grind. And we had so much clothes. Literally we had way too much clothes, but we would kind of wear the same things over and over again because you would have to like crawl into the laundry room, wash what you could, and then like the stuff that was just caked down in the hallway or in the bottom of the ground in the laundry room just like never really moved. It just kind of stayed there. So this is more moderately fucked up childhood stuff than it is hoarder stuff. Both my parents maybe are a bit of hoarders. One is significantly worse. The other one knows when to throw away bad food, when things are trash, junk mail and stuff like that. They're more of just a collector of anything that could ever possibly be useful at any point in time, especially the future. The other one just collects everything. So when I was younger, we lived in this small RV with 6 people total in it, including myself, both my parents and me and my younger siblings. And that place was always like stuffed and full of crap. And I remember at some point when our house got foreclosed on, we were going through this huge garage which had everything from that house inside of it that we lost. And in that house there was literally mountains of clothes. Like, I don't know how tall it was, maybe like 4 feet, and there was like 2 piles of clothes that were taller than me. And this garage was huge, like a helicopter could fit in it because there's a helicopter in it. I think I had a like moderately fucked up but also interesting childhood. So yeah, we were like holding this helicopter for the fire department because they didn't have anywhere else for it to fit, and for some reason it fit in our garage. Anyways, so this garage is huge. There's 2 stories in it. My dad had just like built kind of the second story, and there was no walls off of it. So we would jump off of the second story onto the pile of clothes because we thought it was fun. So on our very last day going through all this shit, and they're like, take anything that, you know, you want to keep forever because this is the last time we're gonna have to like go through this stuff, you know, like after we say this, we're saying goodbye and everything, and then this garage is no longer ours. So we're going through, and I found like an album of all of my like baby photos, and I was going through them, and it just made me really sad. And I was like, well, I'm not gonna want to remember this. I was like 8 at the time, and so I like tucked that photo album like underneath some clothes, and I didn't keep it. And like, oh damn it, I'm gonna get sad again. Give me a minute. So I'm saying this all very lightheartedly because I can now. It's been like a good amount of time, but sometimes like I just get feelings again. So yeah, like I tucked this like photo album with all my baby photos underneath this huge pile of clothes. And like I didn't take it with me. That's not the thing I kept. The thing I kept was, there was a stack of printer paper, and for some reason I thought printer paper was like super expensive because my parents always complained about how much printer paper and ink cost. And so I thought this was just like a treasure, and the printer paper was pink. It was like this hot pink printer paper color. I hated the color pink, but for some reason I kept like a ream of pink printer paper because for some reason I thought that was super valuable. And I had like that pink printer paper for like years. I'm really annoyed that I'm crying, but this is actually like really depressing. I'm not crying, I'm just sick. So another thing that always really bothered me is that my parents during this whole time when like we were living in an RV, basically my whole childhood, they always promised like, you know, one day we're gonna have this big, nice, fancy house. And it's gonna be beautiful, and it's gonna make up for all the shit that we've gone through. And you know, like for a long time I believed it. I was like, yeah, one day, you know, they're gonna give us a nice big fancy house, we're gonna have a home, we're gonna be a family, and we're gonna do all of these things. But after a while you hear this empty promises along with a million others, but that was always the biggest one. And it always really bothered me because they would keep saying this even when I was coming home from college during vacations, over Christmas and summer breaks. And I was like, I'm never gonna live with you guys again. Like why are you still chasing this dream of this big fancy house? Like I don't understand. It was definitely like a keeping up with the Joneses, but also this idea like that, you know, that as like a family of color in a predominantly white neighborhood that we kind of had to like make a claim to something and do good for ourselves. And while there was like a lot of racism and stuff involved where we lived, it was also poor financial decisions and terrible fucking budgeting skills on my parents' part. What else? Our garages were always super full, and I never had any idea what was inside of them. Like anytime we moved to a new place or we stayed somewhere, like the place was always immediately so full, and I felt so cramped and claustrophobic where I lived. And that's like a really stressful feeling to have wherever you're living. Like, you know, you should come home and you should feel relaxed and you should feel comfortable. I never felt like that growing up. The last time I ever lived with that parent who was a hoarder, the summer after my freshman year in school, and I was fucking miserable. Like I hated coming home for the holidays. Like I would come, I would stay for like a day, but when I moved out after high school, I gave my room to my brother. And so when I came home, I didn't have a room to stay in. I didn't have a bed to stay in. I would share a bed with that parent, and it was just like super uncomfortable, and I hated that. I spent most of that summer living with a friend, like out of a suitcase, and that was by far a much more pleasant experience than like going home. Broken things were always broken. Like we broke a TV and it just stayed like that for a year, I think. We broke the oven. We had a broken dryer, not just because it was expensive to fix those things or replace those things. It was just like, you know, oh, there's something else that's broken. Like, okay, of course. Another thing that sucked is that if something went missing, like you just had to basically say goodbye to it. I don't know how many times I had like a favorite t-shirt or a favorite pair of pants, and I just didn't know where it was, and at that point it was just gone forever. Oh, another thing, all of our dishes were always freaking dirty. And by dirty, I mean like they've been dirty for like 3-4 weeks and kind of moldy and like super gross. So whenever like we really had to do the dishes, like let's say we had like Thanksgiving dinner coming up or something like that going on, or like our grandma was coming to the house for some reason, Doing the dishes was like a 3-4 hour event, it felt like. So yeah, that's what it was like living with a hoarder. The thing that really concerns me now that I'm out of that situation is that the parent who lives like that, me and my siblings are super concerned that once all of us brothers and sisters were up and out of the house, when that parent had basically an empty nest, that it was going to get significantly worse. They've been forced to move twice since, and so I don't know what their situation is like right now. I haven't visited where that parent lives. My biggest concern was with age, and as you get older, you know, you can't be maneuvering around stuff all of the time. You can't be eating crap food all the time. And I was just concerned that my parent was going to like fall and injure themselves and not be able to get up. Especially where I work, I see like a lot of fall patients, and some people fall and they're on the ground for like 5 or 6 days before someone comes and gets them. Both of my parents are older. I think my dad just turned 60. So those are like real fears, maybe not, you know, 100% right now, but in the next 10 years, those are like real concerns that I have. Another thing that was super frustrating is that when we tried to get rid of stuff, it was really difficult. Basically, the parent that was a hoarder wanted things organized and to appear tidier, but they didn't actually want to get rid of anything. And trying to have that discussion or that conversation or the encouragement to get rid of stuff was impossible, and eventually we just stopped trying. So yeah, I hope this video wasn't too depressing. That's what it was kind of like growing up with a hoarder. 18 years of my life just kind of sucked, but not just for that reason. If that was like the only thing that went down in my childhood, I'd be fine, but we had lots of other problems growing up. So basically, if you are a parent and you've noticed some hoarding tendencies in your stuff, especially if you have children, I'm not telling you to have the fanciest, nicest house or anything like that, but the place you raise your kids really should feel like a home. If you're a parent and you don't have any hoarding tendencies, good for you. There's a million reasons why you can be a bad parent, and there's one reason why you're not. But yeah, if your kids are comfortable having people over, that's like a really good sign, and like pats on the back to you if you have that for your kid. Yeah, just do what you can with what you have. So if you are young and you're living with someone who is a hoarder, and it's beyond, you know, conversations, and it's beyond chains, and it's nothing that you yourself can fix for that other person. If it's a really toxic environment, like, get out. That's what I did, and I have no regrets about that. At some point, like, if someone doesn't let you help them and they won't help themselves, like, you can't do anything about it. Like, that's just, it is what it is. I was living for the day when I turned 18 and I could go to school, and that's exactly what I did. And then after my freshman year, I got jobs as a resident assistant where I could live and work on campus even over summer breaks, and so I never had to live with that parent in that situation after I turned 18. Maybe you're not 18 yet and it's just gonna suck for a little while longer, but let that motivate you to never have a home like that. If you're someone who wants to one day have your own kids and have your own family, let it motivate you to never have a home like that if you decide to raise your own family. But just keep in mind that hoarding really is a mental disorder. For the most part, from what I understand, it's related to having control over the environment. And so if you change everything, that person lost all of the control that they gained by hoarding, whatever it is that they hoard. So yeah, just try to confront them as gently as possible. There's probably a really good reason that this person does these things. Maybe it's their own childhood trauma, maybe it's their own family violence background, whatever it is. When I was in middle school, we had a Holocaust survivor come and tell us like his story of being in a concentration camp when he was really, really little. And he explained how he was at a concentration camp and he was like starving. He was like skin and bones. It got to the point where he was working with potatoes, and what he would do is he would smear the potatoes onto the inside of like some fabric and stick it to his belly, so when they did like the pat downs for them to exit the like warehouse, whatever he was working in, they couldn't tell he had food on him, and he was bringing the smeared potatoes to feed his dad. I think he ended up like starving and still dying in the concentration camp. So eventually the man was like saved, the war ended, but he ended up moving to America, and the wife explained how anytime she sent him to go get groceries, she would come home and the pantries and the fridge and everything were always stuffed and overflowing because he was still in the starvation mentality, and basically he was hoarding food. So whatever it is that's causing the hoarding mentality, understand people have shit too, even if it is your parents. This video is probably getting way too long, so thank you guys so much for watching. I hope it's not a super sad video. I just wanted to share what it was like. I've met a couple of other people who have parents who are also hoarders. Not something that you just go around saying like, oh hi, my name's Janelle and my parent was a hoarder. I don't know where this comment section is gonna go, but say something down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I keep forgetting to mention it, but I have a Facebook group called Real with Less. I made it for you guys just to share your decluttering journeys. I'll put a link in the description down below. Yeah, thank you guys for watching. Bye.